So after my meditation this morning, I had this push from the angelic council to come on and discuss what happens to the divine feminine when there is a separation. So often we see this in life, don't we? We see people come together, there's this great kind of connection, particularly with twin flames, but it can also happen with karmics or soulmate relationships or false twins. There's this real bonding or moment of initiation, moment of connection, and feeling like you're really wanting to be connected to your partner. And that initiates and sparks like an opening. So you have this feeling where like you're open and you want your heart to be fulfilled and you want this to be a new beginning. And often it is a new beginning. And then what happens there? In the twin flame dynamic, particularly, but it can happen in other relationships. There can be something that gets in the way, some sort of breakdown in communication. In twin flame relationships, you'll have the often the more masculine aspect twin will go and not return, and that can be incredibly painful. But you can also have this in karmic situations where you're stuck in a loop with someone and you maybe want to leave or feel like you need to leave, but then when you do leave, you want to come back to them. And so you keep looping. Or in the soulmate relationship, where you're working together with healing, wounding, in some way, you're working with balance and equilibrium in a soulmate relationship. And you can often see it in that, where one wants to pull away, and then that pulls on another one's wounds. And then people begin to look at attachment theory, and it all gets very complicated. But what the angelic council was showing me today is to really unpack what happens to the divine feminine energy and why. Why do we have to go through this? Why? Why do we have to go through this separation that creates so much anxiety? Why do we have to have these outpourings of usually grief connected to that? And what I was being shown is that we're actually going through cycles of healing. We're going through the ability to heal all our wounding around grief. Now, grief in Chinese medicine sits in the lungs. It's an emotion that's processed by the lungs and the large intestine, if you're into how it occurs in the body. And often grief that is unprocessed will sit as a thick, heavy substance. You'll see this in intergenerational grief, where people have not grieved in the family line, and so it gets passed down and down and down until suddenly it becomes like a miasm. Suddenly we get things like tuberculosis or chronic lung infections, chronic lung diseases, and then also things to do with the large intestine, trouble with letting go, um, all kinds of things there, like Crohn's disease, things that prevent these organs from functioning because there's been a buildup of this astral quality, this emotional, mental, emotional, psychological substance, like a thick substance that gets stuck in the body. So when the divine feminine goes through a separation, often with the twin flame dynamic, she'll be in separation for months, like sometimes years and years. And I've asked the angelic council why? Like, why do we have to go through this kind of really traumatic experience where there is absolutely no reason for it? But they show me actually there is a reason for it, that these patterns of grief keep us out of the heart. They keep us out of relationship and relationship with ourselves, relationship with others, and relationship with the cosmos, with everything. And that can be your relationship with money, your relationship with love, your relationship with your angelic beings. It can be everything. So imagine grief that is unprocessed creates a thick substance that is in the lungs. It encases the heart. If you've ever had the wonderful experience of knowing what lungs do in the body, they are like angels. When they open up, they're like angels that open up around the heart and when they're filling up with air and then they go back down. So they're like this radiating principle around the heart. And it's the most beautiful thing to see. And if you are wondering about that, if we have thick substances in the lungs, then we aren't able to actually process. We're creating blocking substances. And all of that is creating a kind of wall, a barrier, a disconnection to the frequency of love that comes through the heart, but also our frequency of connection with other people. It actually makes it really difficult to stay in connection with other people if there's grief. And we can see that with the avoidant attachment style, that once something is gone and it's pulled away from them, it's actually very hard for them to stay in union, to stay in connection. And all of these patterns in the twin flame dynamic are coming up so that you can actually be witness to that. You can see it playing out. And most people won't even look to their physical bodies. They won't even look to their lungs, but they will look to their emotions. Because when people are going through grief, it's a very intense, it's a very intense experience. Often it blocks all your joy. It blocks your joy about life. It can block your ability to see the future or to vision your future. You're really brought back into the present moment to look and see what is there, to really look and see and feel what is there. And the twin flame separation does do that. So the divine feminine will be having to process all the grief. And you can think, where is all this grief coming from? And some of it is coming from, our daily experiences of grief, the grief from our childhood, the grief, locked into all different aspects of life. It doesn't have to be the death of someone. It can just be things not materializing in the way you wanted to, things not working out in the way you wanted to, or you even you put something somewhere thinking it will be there, and then when you go back, it's not there. These are all forms of grief. But on top of that, we have I would call a serious problem with generational grief. Generational grief from wartime, generational grief from people not realizing what they wanted to do in their lives. So we have like this massive, massive backlog of grief that's waiting to be addressed, waiting to be processed. This is for the whole of humanity as well. So if you're a divine feminine going through any amount of grief, whether that's in a twin flame, a soulmate, or a karmic situation, just know that all that grief clearing you're doing is actually clearing a whole collective of people, all of your ancestral lines, probably your community where you live, maybe even where you're from. If you don't live in the community where you're from, it can be in the land, it can be in just the thought forms of people around you. We have a huge problem with grief in our world right now, and we need to find ways to release it. There's some wonderful people doing grief work, grief circles, getting collective grief work so that we can look at it and clear it from our systems. And the reason this is all going on with the divine feminine is to bring you back into relationship with your twin, where you can both begin to relate to one another. We are actually trying to build the etheric heart, which is the heart chakra that comes out of our body. Here, it's like this beautiful instrument that can respond in unity consciousness. It responds to vibrations and to love. And if all of that is clogged up in here, it's just impossible to hear it. It's impossible to even know what love is if we can't feel it, if we can't really feel it in ourselves. So a lot of this grief process that a divine feminine goes through is really important that she spends time with it, because a lot of it is processing grief in her relationship to herself, which is also the relationship to her twin. In the feminine, there is this nuance that we also grieving the masculine. Oh my goodness, that is such a big thing. We are grieving the loss of the masculine. And at this time on earth, the divine feminine is helping to birth the sacred masculine and bring it back in, because we haven't seen much of it. We've only seen distorted masculine. And I would like to say here, the masculine is also grieving the feminine. We've had this massive split in our consciousness. There's been a lot of division. There's been a lot of very nefarious kind of work that's gone on to make sure that we're split, to make sure that we don't come together. So it's knowing that this work that the divine feminine does is not in vain. Like, it's a very important piece of the picture. So if you're in separation or you're going through any sort of grief, just be with it, sit with it, journal, write, talk about it, write poetry, do do beautiful pictures, sing, do anything that helps you move it through your system. Go out on the land and cry into the earth. Just do things that are allowing you to move this through your body. And there are some wonderful homeopathic remedies for this as well. Go and see a homeopath about it. I've even had a wonderful homeopath give me a star remedy related to the Aldebaran star in the Taurus constellation. And I had like the most amazing uh, release of intergenerational grief by using this essence and this homeopathic remedy. So there are ways now of focusing on and really moving through our systems at a very fast speed. Things that would have taken lifetimes maybe are now we're being able to do in months. So if you are having this experience and you are finding it difficult, then I would really recommend you tap into different ways of working through grief, having a mentor or a friend who's on the, particularly if you're on a twin flame journey, who can talk to about it, who can work through it with you, because at every stage you'll notice in the separation, if you're ignoring your grief, it will come up again to be dealt with. To be dealt with, it will come up again. Your twin flame, you might come back into connection, and then they might block you, or they might tell you, they don't want to be with you. So anything that's drawing up grief again and again and again, it will come up until it is actually dealt with. And the last note I will say on this is that any signs of grief will also block abundance. Anything that is takes you out of relationship with love, takes you out of relationship with yourself and others, and takes you out of relationship with your connection to the world and to spirit, also will affect your finances, it will affect your prosperity, it will affect your abundance. And this is also a good thing to know when you're looking at, why can't I achieve what I want to achieve? Why can't I, move through that particular threshold of earning or anything that I want? These are things that really affect your ability to manifest. And we're not talking about cold manifestation of things where you just want, lots and lots, millions of pounds for whatever. I mean, like the real manifestations where you just want to look after your family, you want to create beauty on the earth, you want to create gardens, you want to create new earth, you want to do the work that you love to do. And this we all need prosperity for, and we all need love and connection with the everything that's around us. So thank you for listening. If you'd like to work with me, you can go and have a look at the link in the bio. I'm doing another twin flame workshop coming up in April, and also I'm doing Birthing the New Earth workshop in March, at the end of March, at the College of Psychic Studies and online, and I'd love you to come and join me there.